after Eve ate from the tree, she complains to God and she says, the serpent deceived me and I ate. The serpent deceived me and I ate. Now we've talked about deception in one of our previous lectures. Let me ask you, what do you have to do in order to deceive someone? You have to lie. But what kind of lie do you have to tell in order for that lie to deceive? It has to be a lie which is very close to what? To the truth. And by the way, the counterfeit always comes after the genuine in time. I want you to remember this because we're going to come back to it. Eve complains, he deceived me. Deception is very close to the truth, and deception always comes after the truth in time. And then I want you to notice what the consequence was for them eating from this tree, which gave them the opportunity to show that they believed that God was the true God and the only creator. In Genesis chapter 3, we find these words about the consequence of their action. Genesis chapter 2, actually, and let's read verse 17. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. What would be the consequence of disrespecting the tree of the Creator? Death. Now let's review what we've studied. 1, God gives a positive command. You can eat of all the trees of the garden. 2nd, he gives a negative command. Of this specific tree you shall not eat. The tree which tested Adam and Eve was in the very middle of the garden. God chose the tree from which they were not supposed to eat. And God was serious about that particular specific tree. Furthermore, that tree showed no evidence of being different from any other tree in its outward appearance. The only thing that made it different is that God had set it apart from all of the other trees. Furthermore, we notice that God owned all of the trees of the garden, but he owned this tree in a special sense. The purpose of the tree was to test Adam and Eve to see if they recognized the Lord as their only God and as their creator. And we noticed that the devil deceived Eve, and as a consequence, the Bible tells us that because they broke God's commandment, they were sentenced to die. Now, why have I gone through all of this material as we begin our study today? Because we're going to find that God has given another test to the world today, and particularly to Christians. Now, before we go and speak about that test, let me ask you, do we have any more proof today that God was the creator than Adam and Eve had in the Garden of Eden? Do we have any empirical proof that God was the creator? Do we have any scientific proof that God was the creator? Do we have any historical proof that God was the creator? No. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 3, it says, by faith we understand that the worlds were formed by the word of God. The things which are seen were formed from that which does not appear, or from that which cannot be seen. So in Hebrews 11 we are told that the only reason we can know that God was the creator today is because God says that he was the creator in his holy word. We did not see it. We were not eyewitnesses to it. We must accept it by faith. Now let me ask you, has God given a test for us to show whether we believe that he is the creator or not? Yes, he has. Now go with me to Exodus chapter 20, and let's notice some very interesting things here. Exodus chapter 20, and I would like to read verses 8 and 9 first of all. Exodus chapter 20 and verses 8 and 9. It says here, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now notice that we have a positive command first. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Did you catch that? 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work. What is God saying? He's giving a positive command. He's saying every weekday is what? For your own personal use. But now notice that that is followed by a negative command. Notice Exodus chapter 20 and verse 10. But, do you remember that little word in Genesis 2? But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. So God has given a command which is positive. Every day of the week is for your own personal use. But there is one particular day that is off limits to you. And so the fourth commandment has a positive command and it has a negative command. Now, let me ask you this. Where is the fourth commandment found in the law of God? Do you know that somebody once counted the number of syllables that are found in the Ten Commandments in the Hebrew? And that person discovered that the Sabbath commandment is in the exact center of the law of God. It comes with the same number of syllables before and after the fourth commandment. In other words, the Sabbath commandment is found in the heart of the law of God, just like the tree was found in the heart of the Garden of Eden. Now, allow me to amplify this point just a little bit. Archaeologists, several years ago, were digging in a place called Ugarit in Canaan. And in Ugarit, they unearthed some tablets, some very interesting tablets of clay. Now, I want to tell you a few things about these tablets. They were actually covenants between a great king and a lesser king. I want you to remember that. They were covenants that a greater king was making with a lesser king. The covenant was on tablets, as I mentioned. The tablets were written on both sides. Now, in the PowerPoint presentation, we have pictures of several of these interesting tablets that were discovered. They were written on both sides. And interestingly enough, on one side of the tablet, right in the middle of the tablet, was the seal of the king who was actually writing this covenant for the lesser king. Now, it's interesting, of course, that this tablet was made of clay, and when the clay was wet, the king would take his seal and he would impress the seal right in the middle, right square center of the tablet. And of course, when the seal was impressed on the tablet, the writing where the seal was impressed was obliterated. People could not read what was underneath the seal. And that's the reason why they wrote the covenant on the obverse side, or on the back side. You see, the front side had the seal, which showed that this was an authentic covenant, and then the other side allowed people to read the contents of this covenant specifically. Now, the interesting thing is that these covenants, in the middle, in this seal, contained 3 items of information about the king who was actually giving this covenant or forming this covenant with the lesser king. 3 items of information in the seal. Number 1, the name of the king who was making the covenant. Number 2, the territory over which that king ruled. And number 3, the title or the office that king held, which in this case would be king of such and such a location. The name, the title, and the territory over which that king ruled or governed. Now, somebody might say, why are you bringing this up? There's a very specific reason, and I want you to go with